Ojo is pleased and proud to bring you our first guest of the night. He is the editor of Racer X magazine, as well as a big part of the Nationals. My boss at Racer X, Davey Coombs. What's up, DC? How are you, man?
Well, hello, Steve. Hi, Charles. Hi, Paul. You caught me in the middle of switching jobs again.
Hey, listen, man, it's over, and we had some COVID affect some of the racers in the pits, but everything else worked pretty smoothly. I know there was some stuff juggling behind the scenes, but it could have been a whole lot worse, huh, Davey?
Well, let me tell you, I just sat in a high school gymnasium for 2.5 hours with a mask on in the middle of West Virginia, cheering on my beloved South Stallion girls volleyball team. And it's a much different world than, say, Pala. But, yeah, I'm so thankful and happy and proud of our team at MX Sports and all the promoters, but really the riders and the race teams and the fans for just sticking with us and listening to our guidance and letting us do everything we could, not only last year but this year, to get to the finish line. And every time you think it's over, and by that I mean the pandemic and the restrictions, something else pops up, and it just seems like it's a daily thing. One county away from where I live in West Virginia, they just went back to remote learning and shut all the schools and all the sports down. And it's like, man, yeah. It's going to end, but it ain't going to end real soon.
Yeah, absolutely right. Do you anticipate next year just being one Paula? Do you see a track coming back, either WW or, like, obviously it's early, but do you think?
Oh, I thought you meant all 12 at Paula.
Oh, no. That was Troy Lee's suggestion. I think Troy Lee wanted all of them at Glen Helen, but yeah. What do you think?
No, I do. I definitely anticipate. If not, if we don't find that 12th facility, it'll definitely be a different facility that hosts both races or hosts a doubleheader.
Right.
And the simple truth is that Pala is Fox Raceway is a very unique situation, being on tribal land, and they, no matter what, don't have to worry about the same things that others and worry about. And last year we told them at the second race, we really want to cut it at 5,000. They're like, oh, okay. They didn't. They didn't. And so this year, when we're also again looking at an uncertain schedule, we knew that everyone wanted to start and end in California, but Hangtown could not go in May. That race would not have happened, in fact, if it had been in May, because of the restrictions on state parks and whatnot. And we put them at the end, and man, I was scared to death that either no one was going to show up, or it was going to be 110 degrees, or the place would be on fire. all three of those were possibilities about 48 hours away, and then lo and behold, the rain comes, the fans turn out in droves, and we ended on a high note. And it was funny. I realized standing there in the infield that the two guys who won the first two motos of the year were the champions, Jet Lawrence and Ferrandis.
Yeah. So we've never had two foreign champions, right? I don't believe. I think that's the first.
I don't think so. I think I saw that on someone's post on Vital, or maybe it was LeBig. But I started scratching my head when you mentioned it, and I'm like, I don't think that's ever happened. And the closest you get is Jean-Michel Bayle himself.
Yeah.
In 1991, winning 3, which has never happened before or since. But there was one other really neat little tidbit about Jet and Dylan and their teams. This is the first year that two brand new teams, basically, Honda's back to the in-house 250 program and Star Racing's 450 program, they each won in their first year.
Yeah. No, absolutely right.
I know that's not like gas and Can-Am winning, but it was pretty interesting, I thought. And and I think that those guys earned it from start to finish. There was a lot more drama, obviously, in the 250 class, because it went down to the very end. But I thought the two best guys won in the end.
I think so too, right, Charles? I mean, I feel like those I mean, Justin Cooper was my pick because Jet didn't seem to get out of his way, but Jet ended up winning more motos, more overalls. You know,
Yeah.
and Dylan, of course, was the class of that
Yeah,
field.
and no matter which way you sort of slice up and dissect the results, like, I mean, they were the best riders on paper. So, there's nothing like you said, mid outdoors.
Yeah.
You know, it looked a little bit different in the 250 class, but ultimately, when the dust settled, the stats lean one way and the points.
Yeah, Davey. So in '89, I read your story about this guy that shows up with Starbuster on his back of his pants and wins the first national that he ever enters, JMB. And in '91, he goes on to become, the first French guy to win a championship. And now Dylan is the second Frenchman, 29 years later or 30 years later to win the premier class. And you were around Jean-Michel back then. Is there any similarities between them? I don't think so in my mind, but do you see any?
I think they both have those courageous mullets. It's a very French look. I do see similarities, but I see more of Dylan and a lot of the other French kids that have come along in the last 30 years being a sort of replica of JMB. JMB blazed this trail all by himself. He had guidance from Roger, but before that, in his generation, the only real international rider was Jeff Leask.
Right.
And he spoke English.
Yeah.
And JMB was sort of an island unto himself. And the French were, and by the French, I mean the Federation, the industry over there, were very much against it. And they thought that, that the next Jackie Vimone should not be trying to be the next Roger DeCoster or the next Ricky Johnson or whoever JMB looked up to. And so he got a lot of pushback to the point where it really motivated him. And then, for 30 years, whether it's Mikhail Pichon, Roncada, Villeman, Porcel, Marvin, and it just goes and goes that they come over, but they never get to where Jean-Michel was. And Dylan's still not there, but man, he's the one that I think is going to be formidable for the next couple of years, because whatever they found after Supercross and before the start of motocross is going to be tough for people to catch up to, because I think that he's got a lot of momentum, he's got a lot of drive, and in that regard, he is like JMB. It's hard to tell what makes the guy tick, but when he says, I'm happy when I win. Winning makes me happy. And he is. I mean, he's I think that he got a bad rap last year, in that early Anaheim stuff with Christian Craig and Jet, but he didn't do anything wrong. It was just because the French have historically made an easy target. But you have to admit, you guys go to all the races. He turned the crowd in a very positive way.
No, he did.
He earned it, and in that regard, I think that he's getting something that Jean-Michel never really got, and that is acceptance.
Right.
We fans and we moto journalists love JMB, but the rank and file fan in the grandstands at East Rutherford, New Jersey, thought he was a commie bastard.
They did, I know, right?
Because that's what Larry Myers is telling them.
Right.
But
I see. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I see more differences than similarities, knowing that Dylan kind of came on a path that was blazed by JMB. But out of all those guys, I think that he might have the demeanor closest to JMB, with just that sort of laissez-faire. You really, he's always got gunfighter eyes, The other guys, sometimes whether it was Porcel or Villy, David Villeman, they would wear it on their sleeves, and they would, kind of wander into, public conversation and interviews and whatnot. And Dylan is he's like a robot, a very cool robot, but he's a machine.
Yeah, for me, Marv, Porcel, Roncada, JMB, Davey, they all had a French riding style. They all rode that way. They were smooth, precise, exciting to watch. But Tortelli and Dylan are the two French guys where I'm like, they don't ride like the French. They're aggressive, they're attacking, they're angry, right? It's definitely a different mentality for most French riders.
Right. And and I forgot about Sebastian. And I would put Sebastian on a level of talent, outdoors especially, with what Dylan showed. But Seb just couldn't get through Supercross in one piece.
Yeah.
And he never really got to be the guy that was battling, Everts in, 97, 98. And I think that's just, that's the cruel mistress that is racing. You're bound to get hurt. And in Sebastian's case, it kept him from ever winning a championship here. But I would say that he's up on that level of the best French guys ever that have come to America.
Yep. 702-586-7857. You got a question for Davey Coombs? Give us a call. Brought to you by the folks at OGO Power Sports. Davey, I also want to talk to you about the Grant Langston controversy, I guess let's call it. The series lost their longtime color guy, GL. He bowed out. Instagram went crazy. Social media went nuts. And you actually, I was surprised. You stopped in to see GL last week. How was that situation for you, who truthfully didn't have anything to do with it, MX Sports or you yourself? But how was that for you, man?
Well, it was unfortunate, but man, GL and I go back to literally the 2000 Motocross of Nations in St. Jean d'Angely. I actually went and did a story on him about getting ready to come to America. And I was like, him and his uncle and his dad, Gerald, I'm like, anything you guys need, anything. And so we've been friends throughout. And it was my sister that introduced him to announcing, because you have to remember in 2008, whenever he couldn't race because of his eye cancer, he never really got to wear the number one plate. Mm-hmm. He'd won the year before. And that was, kind of sad. So Kerry's like, why don't you come to Steel City? We'll put you in the announcer's booth. You can ride a lap of honor, wear that number one plate. And so we've just always had a very good relationship. He wrote for the magazine for a while. And so I barely talked to Grant at the races, or Weege, or you, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm wearing that other hat. And so it all kind of caught me off guard what was happening, because I didn't even know from Weege that there'd been an outbreak in the TV compound, and everyone had to go get tested, and they were telling people, all right, if you're positive, great, but still, we want you to stay home for 5 days. If you're not vaccinated, everyone come back next week. And we're talking about like 6 people here, including Pineapple, one of the first guys in who does all a lot of pre-production. And somewhere in translation, it rubbed Grant wrong. But, I'm not going to, let anyone tell you otherwise. Grant was ready to quit long before COVID. Mm-hmm. He's a single dad, 2 young kids, has missed a lot, and he got really frustrated, especially at Southwick, where both of us missed a flight, and it cost me about 12 hours in the airport, and I think it cost GL a whole day. Mm-hmm. And he was bumming about that and said, I'm going to see it to the end, but that's it. And then this curveball came, and I'm sure that it caught Grant off guard, because I think he was riding in Utah on one of the Ken Fott adventure rides with the Jen Emick is co-producing. And I think that's what happened here. He found out because when the TV company started thinking, what are our options if GL and Ashley can't come? One of the names was Emig, because he's, worked for NBC. He's been great in the booth for many years. He wasn't doing Supercross anymore, but he was a name. Dungy was a name, and Carmichael was a name. And I think that someone called Jeff Emig, who was with his daughter in New Orleans, and that in turn ended up being punched through to Utah, and lost in translation, it became, what do you mean I'm being replaced? No, they were trying to figure out what they were going to do. And so just so happens the next day, which is Thursday, I'm in at a meeting with Lucas Oil with Morgan Lucas, who's taking over for his father, Forrest, in the office, and everyone's got masks on, and me and my sister walk in, and we're like, we're vaccinated. I mean, what you guys are, And then Scotty McLemore tells us about, the situation they're in. And I'm like, holy shit. He goes, in fact, I've got Bondo and GL, texting me now. And so we have our meeting. And then as we're walking out, Scott's like, I'm going to need to call Grant and let him know that, they want him to stay home this weekend. And within, that was 11:45 Indiana time, which is East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we got to lunch and got ordered, GL had sent a text, and then moments later, his videos went up. And I know everyone has an opinion about COVID and vaccinations and masks and whatever, and I have them myself. But at the end of the day, if a private company, which is what Lucas Oil Studios is, says we're going to follow the CDC guidelines and the OSHA suggestions that says if you've had an outbreak, everyone needs to be parked for 5 days if they're not vaccinated and self-quarantine, I would have no problem doing that. We had to do it in my office back in the spring. It happens. That's, you don't want to knock a whole company out or open a whole company up to an OSHA violation in a lawsuit or 200. And but it all sort of, I think, ramped up at once on GL, and he was really frustrated, and it was with deep regret that they accepted his resignation and that he quit, because we were planning to have a big party for him at Hangtown. And we will have a big party for him, hopefully, around Anaheim, because, he is a dear friend of mine, of Bondo's, of Scotty McLemore's, of Jason Wygant's. And, unfortunately, me and Weege and Fro got drugged down into this. I don't know, when people that should know better are texting Jeff Emig telling him not to take the job, don't do this, you'll be a scab.
I know, it's brutal. Brutal.
That makes zero sense. And those same people now are sort of, I didn't really say that, but Fro shared the text with all of us.
Poor Fro.
Anyway, so I wanted to put an end to any confusion that anyone might have had, especially between Grant and myself, and then anyone, I could care less. I've got a friend, a guy that Jason Wygant and I, just like you campaigned to get Dogger in the Hall of Fame, Steve, that's been the last year for me and Wygant, trying to get GL in. I'm not going to ruin a friendship over a misunderstanding with another company and a bunch of haters on the internet who, apparently, there must be a hell of an online epidemiology university, because some of these people can't spell scientists, but they sure know when one's right or wrong.
I know it's a crazy time in the country, and GL did a great job. He's going to be missed. He did a great job.
He absolutely. He was, for 8 years or 7 years, he was fantastic. I personally hope that we see and hear him again on TV, but it's honestly not my call. But when it is, he'd be the first guy that I'd be like, all right, let's get a revolving team of people here, because we're all older, and we've got these great guys that have families and other jobs, like Ricky, Jeff, Ryan Dungey, GL. Then you got announcers that the color commentator, or not color commentators, but play-by-play guys that are fantastic. I put Weege at the top of that list. Why not have a revolving thing where people don't lose their minds because they're on the road for every weekend of summer, or all 17 Supercross races? That's why I quit. I had started a family. I couldn't, and the magazine, so I couldn't be going to the races every weekend. Ironically, I am now, but not Supercross, just outdoors. But anyway, so to put a fine point on it, when I texted GL, and first I wanted to see if he wanted to come to the race, if he needed tickets, and he said no, that he had given his managers the weekend off, and because of they worked all the time while he was gone, so he's like, I'm going to take one for the team, And I said, well, I do need some boots because I'm going on this riding trip, and I don't like to ask anyone for anything free.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, part of that was I just wanted an excuse to come see him. And so I drove up to his amazing shop, really nice bike shop, Langston Motorsports in, I guess it's Menifee, Temecula.
Paris,
yeah.
Paris, okay, yeah. It's all the same to me. I'm from West Virginia, where it's all
It's all the same to us, too, David.
Don't worry. Right.
And so we hung out and bench raced and laughed and you know, obviously it was a relief, I think, to both of us to know that you know it wasn't what anyone thought. But you know, Grant kind of became this accidental martyr for the cause of whatever these people are against, and I can understand that, but they have to understand that no one asked him to take a vaccine. No one was ever ordered to get a vaccine. Not in the Pro Paddock, not in the MX Sports truck, not in the TV truck, not no one.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you join the U.S. Army, yeah, you're going to have to get the vaccination, but. It was really, that's the unfortunate part to me, is that it turned into, like, you know, the haves and the have-nots, or vaccine, anti-vaccine, and man, it was never about that. It was about a company following its OSHA and CDC guidelines, saying we've had a breakout, we don't want to go out of business, we don't want everyone to get sick. If everyone has to go get a positive or get a test, and if you're negative, great. If you're vaccinated and you feel like coming to work, do. If you're not, take 5 days off, self-quarantine. We'll see you next weekend.
Yeah.
And it should have ended there.
I agree. Yeah, it got nutty. So
yeah, and it still is.
Yeah,
it still
it
is
is.
to some
Yep.
degree. And you know, I had let's say a prominent parent of a future superstar come up to me when I got to Fox Raceway and said, "Hey, you know, we got to do something about all this bullshit. You know, like people demanding vaccines and stuff." And I'm like, "Who?" He goes, "Supercrosses." I'm like, "No, they're not." I was like, I mean, I saw the petition going around, but that's actually kind of an exercise in futility. Feld is a private company that will do what they want to do, but in the end, you know who's going to say vaccine or no vaccine? The buildings.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, Feld can't make the contracted riders take a vaccine.
No,
they can't.
Nor can they tell a stadium like the new Las Vegas Stadium in your town, Steve, which is not allowing anyone in without a vaccination. They're not going to be able to strong-arm that $2 billion stadium into, you know, letting people in. I mean, this is not over, and it's changing, and people are going to get angry and confused more. But what's funny is, you know, Team USA is not in Italy right now for three pretty obvious reasons. And that is concerned that the three athletes would test positive and not be able to race once they got over there.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't worth the risk. They all unanimously decided they all wanted to go, but man, Italy's cracking down, and we might, you know, test positive, and they decided not to go. And it's like, well, where's the outrage over that?
Yeah,
you know, we went nuts over this one thing that was not really what people thought it was. And now, you know, we can't send an American team because we don't have three guys that would be comfortable going over there. And by comfortable, I mean feel like they're not going to suddenly get tested and, in fact, test positive.
Yeah.
And a lot of mechanics and a lot of crew members. And, you know, these are weird times. And like I said earlier, they're not over yet, but hopefully the Darwinism in all of this will sort of, you know, get to enough people that it's like, you know, wow, if we were almost at the finish line. We were
did.
almost
We
there.
thought we were there. We did.
we thought we were there, and like I said, they're shutting down schools back here in West Virginia and sporting things, and we're worried about GNCC completing the season, and because I do have those other events. We do have other events that do coming up, but
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm so glad I went to see Grant. We've been sending photos back and forth. He's a great guy, and I know that we haven't seen or heard the last of GL.
No, you're absolutely right. Hopefully not, Paul. So we were bench racing today on our mountain bike ride a little bit, Davey, and then I said you need to ask Davey this question because so the numbers are out, or they're not officially out, but Dan Truman and other people have done the numbers, and so we think we're close to it. But Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, we were just talking about the numbers, and then 13 came up, and I think Craig can pick 13, or maybe Colt can pick 13 if they want. We know Colt won't do it, right? He's already had a bad experience with it. And then I was wondering, has anybody who's done the best with 13, or has anyone won a race with 13? And we can't think of somebody.
You're not going to believe this, but you guys are overlooking someone who did win not too long ago with number 13. Didn't Blake Wharton?
Yes, Blake won a Supercross with 13.
On a Rockstar Suzuki.
Yeah.
On a Rockstar Suzuki. It was Blake Wharton. And before that, man,
yeah, good pull.
You'd have to go all the way back to, Sebastian Totelli won, I think, with number 13.
I don't think he won with 13.
Ricky won with number 13 at Gainesville Opener in 1990. When he and Stanton went across the finish line together.
You said Johnson never won with 13.
I didn't think he was 13 that year. Yeah, you're right, though. He was 13.
And then he won again at the end of that season, a 500 national at Unadilla.
That's right. And then,
RJ won twice with 13.
RJ also ended his career with 13?
Yeah, but his career ended because of his wrist.
Yeah, but was he 13 that day?
Yeah, the 13 again. He was 13 again in 91.
He was 13 in 90 and 91.
Yep.
And he did, 6 Supercrosses and pulled the plug.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely, I don't see it going this year. I don't either. I don't see it going,
I think the guy who did the best with 13 was Dan Marino.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a good pull.
That's good.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly. The best 13, right?
But I do know that was kind of a lot of some of the conversation in the rig this weekend was, Mike Pelletier kind of manages that aspect as the director of racing for the AMA, and he was waiting to hear back from 2 guys with permanent numbers that haven't raced in a while, and ironically numbers 4 and 22, and I'm not sure where he landed on either. I have a feeling 4 may go into the mix, but 22 may not.
Yeah, I think you're right. 22's keeping it. Yeah, he's
just
keeping
in
it.
case.
But I talked to both Dylan and Jet,
and
they both. It sounds like Dylan wants to keep 14, and according to, I didn't talk to Jet about the number. I talked about other stuff, but Lucas said me and Johnny O'Mara were standing there and behind the tent, waiting for one of those many burnouts to actually, catch the stage on fire. And I was like, so hey, number 8, it looked like upside down donuts, 2 donuts stacked on each other.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I think he's going to keep 18 because he's going to be 18. And I was like, yeah, how's that going to look in 2023?
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'd take a single digit. I don't know these guys who don't take single digits. It's crazy to me.
Johnny said, hey, I was number 4 and I was number 5. I won a 125 title with number 4, and I won a Supercross title with number 5. So
yeah,
he was adamant that he should consider it. So anyway, we'll see how it goes. I love that part of the year too. I wish that there weren't so many semi-permanent numbers, so it would be a little more reflective of how guys did. I love Chiz. I love Chizen, but that number 11 is going to stay with him till probably Jet Lawrence's kids are out there.
Right. Yeah, I know, right? I don't like, and Geez, guys have heard me. The fact that 250 Supercross counts for the same amount of points to me is just ridiculous. Like, you got half the competition. It's a regional series. And you look at the permanent numbers; they're 250 guys get permanent numbers.
Yeah, and I agree. It's not perfect, and I know that Supercross wants to get some recognition for what the guys do, but a fifth in the 250 class is like barely qualifying in the 450 class.
No, absolutely. Davey Coombs on the show, brought to you by OGO Power Sports. Davey, before we let you go, I'm excited that the FIM is out of Supercross. I'm excited that the drug testing is going to be a more reasonable policy. It's been a long time coming, and it seems like MX Sports and Feld are going to maybe have a little bit more cohesion on schedules, on drug testing, on different things, right? That's the word I get.
I think that's fair. The AMA and AMA Pro Racing are the sanctioning bodies that are working together. You could do a whole week of shows on, the history of the FIM and Supercross and why they were there and why they stayed there and why the breakup was hard and all that. But, we're to the point now where I truly believe, just like we saw outdoors this summer, that Supercross, as soon as the pandemic is over, are in for a giant rebound. You got to remember, they didn't get to have full stadiums this year.
Yeah.
The restrictions didn't really turn until late spring, and now I hope they don't come back. But my point is that Supercross is perfectly positioned to have a banner year, and the fact that the confusion of two sanctioning bodies and the sword hanging over everyone's head that someone's going to get a 4-year suspension for not having an Adderall prescription or whatever, is gone, and we have more common sense things. I mean, guys are still going to get tested and guys are going to get caught, but they're not going to pay with their careers.
Right.
They'll pay with a season, maybe 2, depending on what it is. But that's the future coming. But I will say this: we haven't had a failed drug test in a while, and we did test this year, and we tested last year.
Yeah.
And so I think the guys got the message, even though it sucked what happened to Christian and Cade and Brock and of course James Stewart, that they're really paying attention a lot more. And I think that given the cooperation and the fact that there will be this sort of unified approach to it will make it better across the board, and also hopefully it'll have the positive effects we all want it to have on the sport.
I hope so too, man. And I like that break between Nationals and Supercross. Keep it at 2 or 3 weeks. Keep that break going. I like that. I was a fan of that. I always thought rushing into outdoors right after Supercross didn't work for industry, didn't work for riders, teams, all that stuff, because I've been there. Right?
Yeah,
but
I get that, but you have to remember something. Hangtown is in a state park. State parks are free to the public on national holidays. Memorial Day is a national holiday. So Hangtown couldn't go Memorial Day. It had to go the week before or the week after. And that has always sort of set the schedule. Now that we know that Hangtown works really well, in late September or mid-September, that might be a possibility. But I think that we should see what Hangtown can do and go from there. Because I like to say motocross starts at Hangtown. But man, they had a hell of a crowd on Saturday.
They did. Before we let Davey go, Charles, he's on the phone right now, and he'll just do what you say. So where would you like to see a national? What track would you, Charles Caslew, like to drop a national into? Whatever you say, he'll bound to it. He's on the phone. He'll do it. It's 100%. It's 100% guaranteed.
No, there's 2 non-starters, but go ahead.
Okay, all right.
Oh, can we qualify? Can we do the non-starters? Can we knock those off the list?
What do you think,
Glen
Chuck?
Helen. We don't need to go Glen Helen.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that.
We're okay with that.
Yeah, okay.
I'd like to see somewhere in my home state of Texas.
Okay.
Cycle Ranch.
Cycle Ranch.
Just outside of San Antonio, Texas.
Okay. All right. Paul.
I know where Cycle Ranch is. I've heard from them a lot. But man, it's hot in that part of Texas in July and August.
I can attest.
It's
to
a
that.
tad
You're
hot.
right.
Yeah, and you know, I don't mean to deflect or anything, but you have to remember that when it gets down to it, Supercross kind of follows a weather pattern. They go to the available stadiums, and those that will have decent weather. So it's primarily a Southwest series for the first half. That's why all those races are in California, Phoenix. And then it works its way to the Northeast in the spring and domed stadiums. Well, with motocross, if we're starting at the end of May, think of how hot it is in Arizona, Texas. Man, we know how hot it gets in Florida. And it's tough. We have tried, not we, but promoters have tried many motocross events in Texas, Lake Whitney, Rio Bravo, the old San Antonio track, of course, Wortham, Texas. Texas is tough because, if you're going to have a flat track, put it in downtown Dallas. Put it next to the Dallas airport, because everything's so spread out as well. It's tough to have an outdoor day-long event in Texas at that time of year. And the same goes for Florida, and the same goes for California. And that's why the California events are first and last. And we go back east, and we go up into the Northeast where it's going to be a little cooler. We got super lucky this year. 12 dry nationals.
Yeah.
Nothing real extraordinarily hot. Palo was tough. Had it been Thursday weather at Hangtown instead of Saturday weather, that would have been a slog. It would have been brutal, and we just got really lucky. But I'll keep an open mind about Texas. I wish someone would pop up and say, "Hey, there's this track in Illinois or Wisconsin or Missouri." In fact, at Loretta Lynn's, anytime I saw someone with Missouri plates, I was like, "Are there any tracks there that that's such a good area?" And North Carolina is the same way. I talked to a certain Australian expat that now apparently has a foot in both the bicycle and the mini cycle world about a place in North Carolina. Believe me, we're looking. I am not against new facilities. I just don't want someone to really invest a lot in a facility and then decide after a year like it's not for them.
Right.
That has happened.
Is a long-term plan to stay away from Loretta Lynn's with Lucas Oil Pro Motocross?
Yes, it is. Loretta Lynn's, Loretta Lynn's Ranch bailed us out big time last year by volunteering to have those two races. It was never, never our intention to reconfigure that track to fit a pro national. It's got the same problem that Texas has. It's really hot at that time of year, and it's also not really close to anything. Loretta Lynn's amateur event is a destination race, a week-long vacation, so it's packed to the gills. But the second Loretta Lynn's Pro National was really light, and there was a lot of things going on, including a hurricane.
Yeah, it was a little.
But no, we do not want to go to Loretta Lynn's. It would be. That is one of the two places that I just don't think will ever work for pro motocross.
Paul, where's Davey going to put a national?
Oh man, well, like Davey just commented on, there's so many different variables, right?
What about Manitoba? Can we get one in Manitoba? That's what I'd like to see, right above North Dakota.
Well, only if you can be at the border to make sure all the U.S.-based rigs fit the Canadian restriction.
Okay.
So, and also make sure that Martin Davalos and Dean Wilson and all those guys. Even if they're retired, I don't care. I want you at the border checking credentials.
There and back.
I'll never
Both
forget.
ways. I
was on Gendro and prayed her forever to have a Supercross in Canada, and we finally got one in Vancouver. It was so bad. Gendro was like, "This is your fault," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry," because there was like 4,000 people in Vancouver, and I was like, "My bad. I thought they'd come out. Sorry." So I don't.
I love going to any year I get to go to Walton. To that race. It's a cool track. I love going to Toronto for the Supercross. I never made it to Vancouver, but
Toronto was cool.
It's really hard to have the AMA National Championship in Canada.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. All right. Anything else for Davey Coombs? Charles Castle, Paul Barbados? Nope. All right.
Great job getting the outdoors in. We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I'm really proud of our crew and our promoters, but I'm really grateful to the riders, the teams, the sponsors, and the fans to just kind of listen to what we were doing at the Safe to Race Task Force, listen to the leadership that my sister and Roy Jansen and Tim Cotter were providing, and also, doing the little things, that might have seemed stupid. I can remember when we tried to start last year at Loretta Lynn's, and no one wanted to wear a mask. And it's like, okay, we're not going to ask you to race in them. Can you just wear them when you're walking around? And,
Yeah.
And we almost didn't make it. Because, all of a sudden the local officials and health officials are like, what's going on out there? No one's wearing a mask. Sometimes we got to help ourselves in these situations, and I don't mean to joke about it, but going to Canada, I think we're getting close to Canada pulling what France pulled, and what Italy's pulling and saying, if you're not vaccinated, stay home.
Yeah, they're
and we're gonna, and I do want to say this, and Steve, I talked to you about this once. I really like the way Jason Thomas thinks about these things. I'm not a mask proponent or activist, or a vaccination proponent or activist. I just did what Jason Thomas did. I realized if I was going to live my life and do the things that I wanted to do, which include traveling, going to Europe, going to eat out at restaurants because I can't cook, I'm going to have to do things like wear a mask and consider a vaccination, or otherwise I might be left behind in those things. And I think that it's going to start to affect sports. And by that, I don't mean motocross. I mean everything. And you're going to see it in the NFL. I mean, Cam Newton ain't playing for 5 reasons, and that's the 5 days he missed in training camp because, he might have had COVID. And they cut him because they're like, we can't destroy, the league over...
the money, the TV contracts, things are marching on the best they can.
Whatever
whatever
epidemiology classes Cam Newton took at Auburn University, I don't think he might not have been there to finish them. And I don't. It's these things it's like everyone is so defensive and so aggro about it, but it's like, man, the numbers aren't changing. They're skewing for certain reasons, and for 200 years we looked at those trends and thought, oh, let's stop doing that. Let's stop smoking cigarettes. It's killing people. Let's stop doing that. Let's get polio vaccinations. Let's get rubella and all this. And it was never the pushback like we're having now. I don't know how this is going to end, but it's going to be heated time and again when really good, well-minded athletes and their fans find themselves unable to participate or their events canceled because we can't get our act together. And it's not my thing. It's just I just wish people would look at history, quit playing amateur scientist, and really think about what's good for the community. And by community, I mean schools, businesses, elderly people, children. We're all bent out of shape about the wrong things. And if it's not right for you, then man, stay home. Just if you don't want to do it, stay home. But don't drag everyone down into this campaign of divisiveness.
Yeah,
that's all.
It's well said.
And I'd say that to anybody's face, and I have recently. And I don't want to, be the other side of it, but I'm just the side that's saying, guys, we got a lot at risk here in our economy, in our communities, with our health, with our well-being, and this ain't going away until we make it go away.
Well said. Thanks for calling, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for everything. Good job on the Nationals. Glad we got this thing done. So,
All right. Thanks, Charles. Thanks, Paul. And thank you, Steve.
all right, thanks.
And you guys enjoy the off season.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to.
I will too. Absolutely. Thanks, Davey. That's Davey Coombs, brought to you by OGO Power Sports, of course. Charles.